Hi, everybody. This is Lesley-Caren Johnson. I'm the author of the Nedbank Ultimate Business Companion, and I'm joining you this morning for our live webinar entitled Important Forms and Templates to Help You Build Solid Foundations for Your Business. Thank you for joining me this morning. I know we've had some technical difficulties this morning with regards to the live stream system, but hopefully we're live now, and I do apologize for the delay in that. Just a couple of points for those of you who watched my webinar about 3 weeks ago, the Simply Biz webinar with regards to systematizing your business and why it's important that you should. You will have known we spoke about some important forms and templates that are available in my book, the Nedbank Ultimate Business Companion. And I didn't have a copy to show you last time at the last webinar because they hadn't arrived yet, but now they're kind of literally hot off the press and they are available, have arrived in South Africa, they're available. They will be available very shortly, very soon for purchase on the Simply Biz website, so you can keep an eye out for that, and I'm sure we'll notify you as soon as they're there and available. But today we're going to be talking about sort of important forms and templates that you can use in your business. They come out of my book. They're exact samples of the ones that are in the book. And the 8 forms and templates that we're going to be looking at today are available for free on the Simply Biz website. They've been made available to you for absolutely free. You can download them, you can use them in your business, and you can really start trying out the forms from the book. And then obviously if you like what you see and you're making good use of them, and you decide that there's other sort of forms or checklists, etc., that you're looking for, they're available in the book. So sort of to kick off, in terms of the availability of the forms. Oh, and just one point, sorry, as normal, as we go through the presentation, if you've got any questions or any comments you'd like to make, please share with us. We'll be able to monitor you as we go through the webinar, and hopefully I can answer as many as possible of all your questions, etc. Okay, so I think we're having an issue from a technical point of view. I can't display the actual presentation on the site. So what will happen is after the webinar, the live webinar, the recording will be uploaded to the Simply Biz site, as will my presentation. So you can always go back and have a look at the presentation and kind of link it back to what I'm saying to you now. So apologies for all these technical glitches this morning, but let's kind of plow on ahead, I guess. So in terms of the free templates that are available, the 8 that we're going to be discussing, they're available on the Simply Biz site in the library, in the template section. So you can go there, you can click on them and download them. And then also in that community section of the Simply Biz site, this presentation, as well as my previous presentation, are available for you to obviously re-listen to, check out the presentation, the PowerPoint, etc. And at least you've got some of the resources from this morning's discussions. So just to get us started this morning, I always kind of, when I talk about topics like this, and before I delve into the forms and the templates that we've made available on the Simply Biz site, I always like to kind of raise some questions, important questions that you should be considering as a business owner. One of those being, for example, are all the legal and statutory registrations and submissions in your business up to date? Now, when I talk about statutory registrations and submissions, tax, VAT, PAYE, your registrations with the Department of Labour, UIF, workman's compensation, anything that's specific to your business and the industry that you're in. Have you taken care of all those? And who is responsible for that in your business? You know, do you have an internal bookkeeper that manages all these things for you, or do you outsource these important tasks to an accountant or a bookkeeper, an external source? And you know, it's very important from a business point of view that when you consider whether you've got someone doing it in-house or someone doing it for you as an outsourced function, that you always keep on top of it. You know, there's no such thing as, well, I didn't know, or I got someone else to do it, so if it's wrong, it's not my fault. As the business owner, the buck stops with you. So you need to stay on top of these things and understand what your responsibilities are. So even though you may not know exactly how to calculate PAYE or your VAT or anything like that, your accountant needs to be doing it, explaining it to you, and you need to be confirming that those submissions and payments are made on time by the deadline dates required every month or every 2 months, whenever it might be. Then as a business owner, do you understand what all your legal responsibilities are? You know, have you registered your business properly? Have you registered your trademark or your logo? Have you registered with all the right departments that you're supposed to register with? It's an incredibly important aspect of setting up and running a business, and the buck stops with you. As an owner, you can never turn around and say, I didn't know. That's not grounds for defense if there's ever an issue. You've got to try and find out. So speak to the right people. Speak to an accountant, speak to a lawyer, speak to a labor consultant. These people are all experts in their field and will guide you in the right way. So I often say, especially in franchising, when we talk about what a franchisee's role is in running the franchise business, depending on the kind of business, whether you're selling fast food or you're in the financial services sales space, or whether you are running a retail store selling cell phones, mobile phones, it doesn't matter what you're doing. There are certain legal responsibilities that you have to comply with. So you need to go and find out what those are. Okay. Another important question to address, for example, if you have a partner in your business, do you have a really solid partnership agreement in place? So many people go into business with family or friends and think, well, it's my brother or my brother-in-law, it's a friend, and we've been friends for a long time, and you think everything's just going to be fine. And then suddenly it comes to the crunch one day, something happens, and you need to decide how you're going to manage this business and split it, or sell. One of the partners is going to sell their share in the business, etc. How do these things get dealt with? And if they're not covered adequately and strongly enough in a really good partnership agreement, then one or both partners are kind of, maybe come off second best. And you obviously don't want to be in a position where that's the situation. When you're operating a business, maybe you're operating from premises that you're leasing. Have you got a really good lease agreement in place that's really fair on you as the tenant, as the lessee? Do you know what your rights and responsibilities are when it comes to being a tenant, when you're leasing these premises? Okay, another important point. What about staffing and labor policies and the staffing and labor laws? Are you okay with that? Are you aware of what your legal requirements are? Or are you like a lot of small business owners that, you kind of just think, well, you'll wing it and you'll take your chances. And if something goes wrong, well, so what? I'll have to appear at the CCMA, I'll take my chances. You don't have to do that. As long as you put the systems and procedures in place and your documentation complies with the labor legislation, you'll find yourself in a far better position. Okay. Another important question: do you know specifically who your target market is, or are you just trying to be all things to everyone? From a marketing point of view, it's very important to identify who your target market is, who it is you're selling your products or services to, and then making sure that your marketing material is appropriate and relevant to that market, that you're talking to that market. So these are just some of the questions and the points that are obviously relevant to business owners, small to medium business owners. There are probably a whole host more. I'm not seeing any questions coming through at the moment, but if you've got any questions as we go along, please don't hesitate to kind of type them in, and we're going to try and answer those questions for you. Okay, so moving on. If I start with looking at some of the important forms that we've made available to you, I'm going to start with kind of really building solid foundations. And I go back to my previous webinar with regards to the systematizing of the business. If we've got really solid and good systems in place in a business, as I said, that business can operate without you as the owner being there present 24/7. I referenced something in the last webinar where, if you think of McDonald's as a business opportunity, and you as a business owner were looking to buy a business, and you had the option of buying a McDonald's, or you had an option of buying an independent business, Joe's Burgers, for example, which would you go for? Which would be the most attractive one for you? And I'll tell you, in most instances, the most attractive business opportunity would be the McDonald's. And the reason for that is because they have the systems in place. They have that way of doing things here. And as a potential buyer coming in to buy that McDonald's business, I look at that as an advantage, because, as I said, it means I don't have to be there 24/7. I can put staff in place to do a lot of the work, and I can manage the business more strategically as opposed to being involved in the business on a daily basis, as opposed to working on my business. So very importantly, from a starting point, look at the solid foundations, and solid, success in a business begins with building these solid foundations. And of course, that goes to planning and the importance of planning in the business. So why is it important to plan? Firstly, if you think about it, a plan is something that you're going to put in place now, but it's looking to the future. So it actually forces us to look ahead and try and come up with ideas and things we could think that we're thinking of that could impact the business positively and negatively going forward. And ideally, obviously, we set our goals and our objectives for the business and where we want to see our business going in the future, but it forces us to really take a good hard look at maybe 2-3 years down the line, 5 years down the line, and then the longer term, 10 years down the line. Where is our business going to be at that stage, and what do we need to do now in order to help us achieve our goals and objectives moving forward to those 3, 5, 10-year marks? Obviously, planning also allows us a way to measure the success of our business. If we've put clear objectives and clear timelines in place for where we see our business going into the future and what we might need to get us there, we can then measure the business success against those objectives and those goals. And whether that's from a financial point of view, a staffing point of view, our marketing initiatives, everything goes to, I like the little saying, test and measure, that we put the goals and objectives in place, we decide how we're going to measure our success, and we're constantly looking at, are we achieving those objectives? Or how much closer are we? Are we 50% there, 30% there, in terms of our timelines, etc.? It's very important. Planning also helps us to motivate support from different stakeholders. So depending on what you're putting in your plan and who you're targeting with that plan. So for example, if you're planning to raise funds, capital for the business, very importantly, that you gear your business plan or your planning to the likes of an investor or a bank or whoever you're going to look for financial assistance or a loan. Whereas if it's more from an operational point of view and a business growth point of view, obviously there you might want to, one of your stakeholders, or your stakeholders might be your employees. You might want to find ways to encourage and motivate them to help you to achieve your objectives. So your plan should always be looked at from the point of view of who's my target audience? What am I trying to achieve with this plan? And obviously, because we're testing and measuring, because we've put in place very clear objectives and goals, it obviously can help us succeed. It's a plan without any actions and without any sort of list of what do we need to do to achieve the plan, and without physically going out there and starting to do it, is almost like a pipe dream. So you've really got to get out there and achieve the timelines and the goals in order to succeed. So the plan most definitely, or planning most definitely, helps you to succeed. It also helps you, I think, it puts you in a different frame of mind. If you kind of start looking at your business and taking yourself out of the space of just sort of operating the business, looking at it more strategically, being more of the entrepreneur as opposed to the technical person operating the business on a daily basis, you start thinking differently about your business. You almost take the blinkers off, if you like, and it allows you to kind of think logically about what you want to do, and almost dispassionately take the passion and the emotion out of the business, so that when you're looking at your business, you can really think of clear goals and objectives you want to put in place, realistic timelines that you need to put in place, and then what resources that you're going to need in order to help you to achieve those goals and objectives, and the timing. So when it comes to planning your business and kind of starting to put a business plan in place, and because that's kind of where we're heading, if you think about it, think about it from the point of view of going on holiday. We always used to use the example of, we don't just jump in the car and head off to wherever we think we're going and hope we're on the right road and we're following the right direction. Typically, in the old days, we take a map. Now we plug an address into our phones or into our GPS, and obviously we've got a bit of a guide that's going to help us to get to our direction, and we're going to consult it on a periodic basis as we go. So especially if we're going to somewhere new, okay? And for a lot of us in business, our goals and objectives are taking us to somewhere new in our businesses and in our lives. So we certainly need that kind of roadmap to help us identify which route we're taking and how we're going to get there, okay? And the same obviously applies in your business to the analogy with regards to the roadmap. We need clear direction, and obviously we need to plan our route. It's not just a bit of a thumbsuck to say, well, this is what we want and we're kind of hoping for the best and we'll get there eventually. If we have a proper roadmap in place or a business plan in place, then obviously it'll help us keep us focused and keep us on the right road to achieving our goals and objectives. And very importantly, you need to, when considering your business plan and when drafting your business plan, and even here a lot of business owners get someone else to write the plan for them, you still need to stay very close to the process. This is your business and you've got to achieve the objectives and the goals that are set in the business plan. So even if you do outsource it to somebody, it's important that you kind of remain on top of it and be part of the process, because you've got to be comfortable with it, and the business plan must be easy for you to use and implement in your business. So we've got a question here from Given. Given, I see you were on our webinar last week too. Welcome back, or last time rather. Welcome back. Given's asked, how detailed is a business plan supposed to be? Because it sometimes changes based on market findings. So absolutely correct. A business plan is not something that's set in stone. Once you've written it, you kind of go, okay, that's it, and it's the final version, and we never look at it again. The business plan is a guide. It's helping keep us on the road and helping keep us going in the right direction, so that we don't become sidetracked. Because so often what happens is, we decide on a certain product or service offering that we perhaps are going to offer our target market, and then suddenly we see something advertised overseas or locally, and we think, gee whiz, like, I think we could sell that too, and suddenly we go off on a tangent without really assessing whether or not that new product or service is actually in demand, and in demand by the customers that we're targeting, and also whether it's actually going to contribute to achieving our goals and objectives. So we try and then become more things to everyone, as opposed to staying more focused and being sort of really targeting our target market and providing the products and services that are going to meet their needs. But as we said, a business plan is not that hard and fast document. It's not cast in stone. It's got to be reviewed periodically and updated based on all these different findings, based on what's happening in the economy at the moment. I mean, that's ever changing. From one day to the next, we kind of worried about what's happening with the rand, or are there investment opportunities in the country, or there's all these things going on, and we've got to constantly assess our business in relation to that and identify if we're still on the correct path, or do we need to make amendments and adjustments so that our business plan is more reflective of the actual what we're being exposed to, and what is sort of relevant, and also what is still achievable. Maybe what was achievable 6 months ago is suddenly no longer achievable, or it's going to take us longer to get there for various reasons, or things that might impact the business. So very definitely, it's not something you're going to write and file away and forget about. You've got to constantly revisit that business plan, and then obviously make adjustments. And even from a financial point of view, if you've included financial projections and goals in your and budgets in your business plan, you've got to go back and revisit those literally every month. Okay, so if I've set monthly targets for sales and revenue, I've set monthly targets for my expenses, my cash flow, etc. I've got to go back and at the end of every month assess my actual performance against my goals or my budgeted performance. Okay, so just from a business plan point of view in general, and here's one of the forms that's available for you on the SimplyBiz site, is the business plan template. And what the version in the book, or the example in the book, shows you the template under a few headings. There's several headings. I'll go through some of them in a moment with you. And under each heading in the book, it actually tells you the typical type of information you need to be including in that section of the business plan. And then, of course, on the CD-ROM that comes with the book, you just download the template. It's got the headings, and you can now go and populate under the content under all those headings with your business information, etc. So in terms of what your business plan should be including, or should have included in it, typically the standard format is a bit of a title sheet and a contents page. There's nothing worse than getting a business plan from somebody and it doesn't even have a table of contents. So you've got to kind of wade through, and sometimes a very lengthy, hefty business plan before you can actually find pertinent information that, as the reader, the relevant reader might be looking for specific stuff, specific information. Now I've got to wade through all this content. Whereas if there's a decent table of contents, I can obviously look at that, and I can just jump through to the sections that I'm really interested in. For example, if you were submitting a business plan to a financial institution or an investor because you're looking for some financing or funding from them, you would, the investor or the potential investor would literally jump to the financials first. They want to see, the first thing they want to see is there affordability to repay a loan. So once they've looked at that and they've kind of satisfied themselves that you've covered that adequately and your figures look good, then they might read other aspects and relevant aspects of the business plan. So make it easy for people to find the information they're looking for. Then there's the executive summary. Now, the executive summary, and I always advise people, write that last. Write everything else, draft everything else in your business plan. Talk about your business objectives and your goals. Talk about the business concept and the products and services you're selling. Talk about your target market, the infrastructure that you have available. So for example, if you're a logistics or a courier company, talk about the vehicles that you've got on the road, how you manage the facility in terms of where parcels and products come to before being distributed. Takealot, for example, if they were setting up their business as a new business, obviously in the early days it was delivery. Takealot would deliver. Now they've got all these pickup points all over the country where I can now go online, I can order an item or two, and if I don't want to pay the delivery fee, I can opt to go and collect it from a distribution center or a depot close to me. So as a business person, if I'm looking for finance, I've got to really detail what my infrastructure is in terms of where I am currently. And if I'm looking for finance to build that infrastructure, that's where I've got to really motivate what I need to do in order to kind of meet certain customer demand and my objectives in the business. If I'm a logistics or a courier company and I'm trying to source new business, I'm trying to get a big retailer, for example, to come on board so that I can deliver all their orders to their retail stores, then I've got to really focus on the fact that, I might have a national footprint. I've got distribution centers in all the main centers, my turnaround time on deliveries, etc. There, I would focus specifically on that kind of information. If I've got sort of nominated or preferred suppliers and supplier arrangements that I've had for a long time, I'd focus on that in a section of the business plan. What my marketing initiatives are, and remember, marketing's broad these days in terms of your traditional marketing, television, radio, print advertising, your social media. There's so many ways to market, so be very specific about what your marketing initiatives and your marketing kind of policies and procedures are in the business. Your financial considerations, again, depending on who the target is of your business plan, who's going to read it, how much detail you would need to go into in the financial considerations would depend on that. So once you've gone and drafted all this content in your business plan under all these headings, you then go and say, right, what are the real key or salient points of my business plan that if someone only read the executive summary, would they get the gist of what I'm trying to communicate in this plan? And you pull those little gems out of the whole body of your document, and you make sure that those read in a really good way in your executive summary. So it's almost like if you read the inside cover or the back of a book, if you're going to try and decide if that's the book you want to read, that little paragraph or two paragraphs have to really grab you and you say, yep, that's the book I want. A business plan is exactly the same. I've got to read the exec summary and I've got to say, yes, this sounds interesting. Let me see what they've got to say further. And then as a target audience of that business plan, I would then read further into the business plan and go into the different sections. So audience targeting is very important so that you actually frame your message correctly when typing up and developing your business plan. Okay, moving on. I see there's no questions on that. So that business plan template is available. You can go and download it from the Simply Biz website. So another point that's obviously very important, I touched on this when I said to you in the beginning, some important questions to consider is the statutory and legal considerations in the business. Our business registration requirements, such as the CRPC, so that's registering your legal entity, your business, registering your trademarks and your logos. If you've invented something, registering your patents, all of those important things. Obviously SARS when it comes to things like tax and VAT and PAYE and all of those things. Department of Labour, workmen's compensation if you employ staff. And then, as I alluded to earlier, industry-specific regulations. There's always something that applies to different industries. If you're in the financial services industry, there's all the Financial Advisory Board, the phase compliance issues. If you're in the restaurant and food industry, for example, let's say you're running a restaurant and you serve alcohol, you need to obviously have a liquor license. With your workman's comp, you always need a letter of good standing from the Workmen's Compensation Commissioner, that sort of thing. All of these things have to be in place. Something simple as if you have television screens in your business, you need a TV license, so things like this. Make sure that all of those requirements, look at your business without the blinkers on and identify what all those requirements are and ensure that you are 100% compliant. So One of the forms that we've provided for in the book is just an example of the application to register as a taxpayer with SARS, the IT 77C. You can go and have a look at the book. You'll see a lot of different forms of reference, but they note that the list is not exhaustive, and the examples of the forms are not exhaustive. What we've also done in the book is we've made reference to various websites where information and forms are available. So I've only included the more sort of commonly used or commonly requested forms in the book. So for example, the company registration type documents, if you're going to register trademark, the statutory, the SARS kind of statutory, I've included the application for registration as a taxpayer, the VAT forms. We've included the workman's comp. We've included some UIF type forms, but doesn't mean that's all the forms there are. There are loads of forms. So you need to kind of go to those websites that we reference, and you'll see, you'll be able to look around and see what is relevant to your business and make sure that you then apply and fill in the correct forms for your business. And as I said earlier, you can do all of this yourself, but you can obviously also outsource this to like a bookkeeper or an accountant or a labor consultant or anybody else who's a professional and an expert in their field. But just get it right. It's easier to kind of operate, and once you've checked the box and it's all been done correctly, you kind of don't have to worry about it or revisit it again. It's done. So here's another question. How long can I legally operate as a sole proprietor? Is there a limit? There isn't a limit. I'll tell you, I've operated as a sole proprietor for many, many, many years. So there isn't a limit as far as a sole proprietor goes. However, what may happen is, depending on the type of business that you're running and operating, you might find that your clients eventually start saying that they might not be able to deal with a sole proprietor. They might need a formal legal entity business that they deal with. So I had that with a big corporate several years ago, where part of the business policy was that they, from a finance point of view, they couldn't pay a sole proprietor. They could only pay a legal entity in the business. So it was a bit of a challenge to try and get around that, but that's kind of one of the things that might actually prompt you eventually to say, okay, well, I need to go and register a company. And just on that point, as you might remember, many years ago, you had the option as a business owner to register a CC. You didn't actually have to register a company. Now, with the New Companies Act, we no longer register new CCs. So there still are like shelf CC companies available that you can register, but kind of why would you? You could just go through the CIPC website, CIPC, and you could literally register online there to become an agent, and then register your own business, and you would then register a company. And originally, before the new Companies Act came in, there was going to be a kind of deadline time in terms of by when CCs had to convert to companies. But that's kind of never really been enforced, and there's still lots of CCs operating, CCs that haven't kind of done the conversion. So yeah, you're under no kind of pressure or stress to convert from a sole prop to a company or from a CC to a company. But if you decide to register a company, if you don't have one, then obviously go the company registration route, not the you won't go the CC route at this stage. Okay, so I hope that answers your question there. Okay, so just in terms of the business plan and the statutory stuff, as I said, outsource but stay close. So if you think about the pitfalls, if you like, if you're not on top of these kind of things, as I said, I didn't know, or my bookkeeper did it for me, kind of doesn't get you off the hook if there's a problem. And if the likes of a SARS decide that they want to levy penalties and fines against you because your payments weren't correct or they weren't made, etc., that's on you, not on the bookkeeper. So please stay very close to that. Don't abdicate your responsibilities with regards to these important things. I just wanted to think if there was anything else I needed to tell you about that. I think that's about all. If you've got any questions, give me a shout. Okay. So moving on to the financial controls in the business. And again, this is another one that people like to outsource to accountants and bookkeepers, and then they don't stay on top of the business and the performance and the operations in the business. And, I can't emphasize the importance for systems and controls more than in this aspect of the business. So my comment earlier was, don't abdicate your responsibilities in this regard. Okay, so bear in mind, we can delegate, but we don't abdicate. So for a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, financial management is often a scary place. We don't know what we don't know. So we tend to kind of palm it off onto someone else and say, just take care of this for me. So although I kind of always say, if you're not an accountant and this is not your field of expertise, focus on what your core business is, focus on what your strengths are, focus on the marketing or the sales or whatever it is that you're really good at, and outsource these functions, but stay close to it and always be aware of what is going on from a financial point of view in your business. Okay. So, you can ask your bookkeeper or your accountant. They can reconcile your bank account. They can write up your books of accounts. In other words, your financial statements every month. They can deal with your creditors if you like. You can pretty much negotiate whatever it is that you want your accountant or bookkeeper to do. They can do your submit your obligations in terms of the statutory requirements, etc. But always stay, always stay involved in the process. Often what will happen is your bookkeeper or your accountant will you'll pass the information on to them, say on a monthly basis. They will then capture that information into their accounting system, whether that be Pastel or QuickBooks or any of the software packages. And ideally what you want is to agree with your bookkeeper or your accountant that you will submit the paperwork, the business paperwork, to them by a certain date, so as soon after month end as possible. They will then process that information and you'll agree a date by when they should submit the financial statements and the reports back to you. And ideally, what always makes sense is, even if you don't meet with your bookkeeper or accountant every single month to go through the monthly financial statements, it's a good idea to have periodic meetings. So decide what works for you, monthly, every second month, once a quarter, but make sure that you're staying close. And the reason why I talk about it and why I kind of try and emphasize this part of controls and systematizing so strongly is that, think about your business. So let's think about a business that's got a commodity for sale. There's a cost of sales attached to that commodity. So I sell it to a customer for a certain price, but it cost me a certain price to bring into my business or to make, if I'm actually making something out of raw materials or different components to come to a final product. And once I've sold that product to my customer at a certain selling price, it gives me a gross profit. Now, if something goes wrong in that buying process or that making up process, the recipe or the instructions to put a product together and sell it as a finished product, if something goes wrong or I've wasted some of my product in getting the final product ready, etc., it's going to completely skew my cost of sales and my gross profit. Now, that could be something that happens on a regular basis. And unless you are monitoring things like your gross profit and your cost of sales on a literally a weekly or a monthly basis, when these issues arise, if you don't notice them quickly enough, you cannot take corrective action quickly enough. And what will often happen is the same issues then get perpetuated in the business month after month after month, and only 3, 4, 5 months down the line do you suddenly realize there's a problem. That could have cost you an absolute fortune. So remember that from an accountant's point of view, whatever information I'm giving my accountant or my bookkeeper to input into the software, into the accounting software, garbage in, garbage out. If I give them good, solid, accurate information, I'm going to get good reporting out of it, accurate reporting that I then I can use to help me run my business. So stay close to it, okay? But important in this aspect of the business that we put systems in place, okay? I really can't emphasize that strongly enough. And ensure that as a business owner, you upskill yourself to be able to read and interpret the information that's been provided in the financial statements. I'll look at a balance sheet and I can kind of understand what the balance sheet is telling me, but give me an income statement or a cash flow and I'm very au fait with how those, what information that's telling me. So as a business owner, I almost don't need my accountant to talk me through my income statement and my cash flow forecast, but I certainly do need them to talk me through my balance sheet. So decide what you know and what you understand, and make sure that you're very clear on that information that you're reading out of your financial statements. But on the other hand, where you're not sure, don't be afraid to ask. That's what your accountant is there for. Remember, they're the experts. They know what they're doing. So always ask. And as I said, agree on timelines and turnaround times for information coming back from your accountant. By when will you get the information to the accountant at month end, and by when do you expect the financial reports to come back to you? Because this allows you to address any issues or anomalies quickly in the business, and that you don't have those repeats of same problems going on month after month where suddenly you can do nothing about them. Okay, so the next form that we've included in the SimplyBiz site, the free form for you, is the cash flow projection. So if we think about sort of cash flow, meaning of that term, that kind of means movement of money into and out of the business, okay, literally. And if we think of the term cash flow forecasting, that kind of means attempting to predict what money will flow in and out and when. Okay, so think about the cash flow, the money flowing into the business. What are the sources of income that your business generates? So if you're in the retail or the food or restaurant space, or you own a hairdressing salon, or whatever type of business where you're selling a product or a service to a customer, typically your income is being generated from the sale of goods or the sale of those services. And the frequency at which your money comes in is dependent on whether a customer comes into your restaurant or your shop and literally buys a product, and the transaction gets processed through a till, a point of sale, and there you go, the cash or the money's, cash is in the door, the money's in the bank because of a card payment. When it comes to selling services to a customer, you might bill the customer at the end of the month, and within hopefully a few days or 30 days, depending on what your agreement is with the customer, that payment will be made within that time period. Now, that's the money flowing in, but already there I've given you two very important clues as to the frequency of cash money flowing into your business. As a cash business, my till goes ka-ching, ka-ching, and the money comes into the business. Providing a service to a customer where I'm invoicing perhaps at the end of a month or an end of a period, or even at the end of the project, obviously only going to get that money maybe 7 days or 30 days later. Now, although that money is due to me, I still don't have it in my bank account. So cash flow, I'm saying, well, that money is still coming, but it means I don't have it right now to actually spend on anything or utilize that money for anything in the business. Obviously, money going out of the business is any of my business expenses, paying my salaries and wages, paying my rent, paying for my company vehicles if I've got a fleet of vehicles or things like that, paying petrol, water, and electricity, all of those business operating expenses that we have to pay, our marketing fees or our marketing payments if we're advertising and marketing, etc. So as much as we've got all this money coming in and we can project where this money's coming from and when we're going to get it into the business, we must also be able to say, well, I've got all these expenses, but when do they need to be paid? And I know some business owners, especially small business owners, often what they do is they try and arrange for the outgoing money, their creditors, to be paid sort of at different times. They stagger it through the month so that they give themselves time for some of the income, the revenue to actually come into the business. And just like when I was talking about the importance of the financial controls a moment ago, important to kind of look at your business financial performance, your actual performance in terms of things like an income statement on a regular basis, like once a month. So it is important to monitor your cash flow on a regular basis, like once a month. Don't think that because there's money in the bank that you're okay. The saying about turnover is vanity, profit is sanity, but cash flow is reality, to kind of coin a bit of a cliche. It's that cash flow that we've got to make sure that the money's sitting in our bank account and coming in when it should come in, which enables us to actually do what we need to do in the business. It enables us to pay the bills, to do our advertising and marketing, buy that new vehicle if that's what we need for the business, or that new piece of equipment, whatever the case may be. So very important to monitor the cash flow on a monthly basis. And then, again, not just prepare a cash flow forecast and file it in a file and say, okay, that's it, I've done my cash flow forecast, to actually compare your projections and your estimates with what your actual performance is every month. So go back and once the month is over, go and actually look at how the month panned out. How did you actually perform? What's your cash situation looking like now at the end of the month? And look back on the month and say, well, did it all pan out as I planned? And if not, adjust going forward. Okay, don't just leave it at that and say, okay, well, planning doesn't help, or what's the point of it if it's never going to be accurate? It gives you that direction, and it just kind of gives you a framework to work in. So please don't think it's a bit of a waste of time exercise. It's a very important exercise in your business. So really try and get out there and make sure that you prepare a cash flow forecast, or your accountant does, and then that every single month you monitor your actual performance against what you projected. Okay, so that form's available, or that template rather. It's an Excel spreadsheet. It's got some calculations and formulas in it. It makes it a little bit easy for you to work with. But you're obviously going to need to go and pull things like your bank statements and invoices, etc., and information, maybe reports from your point of sale system or your accounting system, and you can complete that cash flow forecast. Another template that we've provided for you on the website is the income statement template, and it's the income statement with the actual versus budget. So it's pretty much that you would kind of prepare this income and expense statement for a monthly period, month on month, and it would require what you budgeted for in terms of income and expenditure, and your profitability for each month. So you could do this where, I always say prepare an income statement at least 6 months in advance, and then every single month, again, you would go back and you would check your actual performance against your budgeted or projected performance. But if I look at the income statement, we often compare the income statement to a video camera, almost like it's taking a movie of your business over a period of time. So from the beginning of the month to the end of the month, what happened in the business? And if you kind of look at the income statement, it kind of gives you that all those events, what happened. It's like watching a movie of what went down in your business. Okay. So an income statement sets out the results of the trading activities over a period of time. So you can do it weekly, you can do it monthly. I would always do it monthly at a minimum, and then obviously look ahead as well in terms of projecting for at least 6 months ahead. Monitor your actual performance against budgets, as I said, and again, it allows you to take timely action. If something's gone wrong, or if something crops up and you go oh, that doesn't look good. For example, let's say, for instance, your petrol. Okay, that every month when you look at your income statement, your petrol expense is equivalent to 1% of your monthly turnover. Suddenly, you get your income statement for the month, and your petrol sitting at 2% of turnover. What happened? Now, obviously, let's say you're a courier or logistics company. Let's say that your business, you had a quite a nice increase in your business, but that increase, you might have done a deal with a customer that you might not be charging them the full rate because you want to get them on board, or whatever the reason is, that the income part doesn't correlate with the increase in the petrol expense. Then you would need to go back and investigate it. Where you can justify, where there's a reason for it, at least you've investigated. You go, okay, no, there's a good reason for it. We understand it, but obviously next month it should go back to 1% of sales again. So that's the importance of monitoring. Same as your salaries and wages. If your salaries and wages bill is normally a percentage of turnover, and you've got a benchmark for that, then every month you check and you make sure that your salaries and wages, as it reflects on your income statement, is in fact in line with your benchmark, your targeted benchmarks. Okay, so again, there's some really nice formulas for you to work with in the income statement. And obviously you can take that income statement and you can create your own from that, where you spread it out over a 6-month period or a year period. The one that's included in the book and on the CD-ROM is purely the one month income versus, actual versus budget. So you can have a look at that. Okay, moving along to staffing. So, we've covered a couple of the forms that are in the building block section of the book in terms of the business plan and the statutory registrations. We've covered a couple in the financial control section, namely the income statement and the cash flow forecast. Now to move on to staffing, we've got a couple of great forms for you that are available on the Simply Biz site from the staffing section of the site. And from a staffing point of view, if I can just start off by saying that, if you've been in business for a while and you've employed a lot of staff over the time that you've had your business, you'll know that sometimes you've had absolutely fantastic, great staff that are there to help you grow the business and develop your business. And you've had some staff who you just think, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? They just don't do what you require them to do, or they're just not skilled or competent enough to do what you needed them to do. So, it's very important that when you recruit staff for your business, that you recruit the right staff for the job, okay, and for your business. They need to fit the culture of your business. So people who will help your business grow. Now, to help you achieve this, it's very important that you actually develop and implement a really good selection and recruitment policy and procedure. And if you go into the Simply Biz site after the webinar and you look at the PowerPoint presentation, the slide actually contains a little bit of a diagram that talks to identifying needs and developing position descriptions in your business. So, don't just say, well, I need 2 or 3 staff members. Be very specific as to what your expectations are, what job functions and tasks do those people need to actually carry out, and put those down in written format. So develop a position description or a job description, and then plan how you recruit. Okay, and there's laws around what you can and can't do here. So if you put out an advert, for example, and I'm sure a lot of you will have experienced this, you advertise or you tell your staff you're looking for an employee to fill a vacant position. Suddenly you are inundated with applicants, people sending you their CVs or coming to fill in an application form. And the minute you advertise a position for a job that's available, the labor laws, the Employment Equity Act kind of says that person's an employee, is considered under the definition of employee to be an employee. So you need to treat them right. You need to make sure that you kind of tick all the boxes. And it makes just good sense, and it's just polite that if somebody applies for a job, that you actually let them know if they're successful or not. So a lot of the times, as opposed to trying to send a formal communication to all these people that may have applied for the job that aren't successful, you could have a policy on the advert or your notification that you have a vacancy available that just literally says, if you haven't heard from us within 10 working days, then please see that your application was unsuccessful. So, but you need to put it out there. You need to make people aware of what your policy is. So come up with a really good recruitment plan for how you're going to deal with all these applicants. When and how are you going to interview the applicants that you think are suitable for the job? And how are you going to make a decision in terms of identifying the applicant best suited to fill that position? Okay. Then obviously the next step is the actual sourcing and advertising of the position, assessing and interviewing those applicants, and how you do that consistently for every single applicant, even down to the questions you ask should be exactly the same questions, and keep them job related. Okay, you can't ask someone like if they're pregnant, or ask someone if they what their HIV status is. You can't ask someone if they have a car to get to work, unless them needing a car is a standard requirement or a prerequisite for the job. So if they, for example, have to be the position is a sales representative and they've got to have their own vehicle to drive out to see clients, then obviously they do need to have a reliable vehicle. If, however, they're coming to work every day and they're going to be your receptionist and sit behind a desk, as long as they can get to work and they've given you assurances that they can get to work on time every day, they're not going to have a problem. Then having a car means nothing. So be very specific. Keep your questions in the interview limited to what the requirements of the job are. So like performance-based questions and job-specific questions are quite important, okay? And then ask every single applicant the same set of questions. Keep notes on their answers so that then after the interview, you can actually compare the applicant's answers. So now you're comparing apples with apples, and then you can make your selection and decide which of the applicants was successful, and you can make them an offer. But it doesn't end there. Make sure that your onboarding process is documented as well. Some people have this fantastic selection and recruitment process, and then this new employee starts work on the first day and there's not even a decent induction program in place. So they kind of arrive at work and they sit around waiting for someone to show them what to do or to introduce them to people. So take it one step further and make sure that on their first day that they're starting, that everything's in line, all the paperwork's been addressed, and now they're coming on board and we're giving them a really good, solid induction into the company and into the business as well. Okay, and doing it this way, one of the points about a good induction program is, a lot of people are excited to start a new job, so you don't want to stifle that enthusiasm on their first day. Make sure that you keep the rah-rah going a little bit, and then make sure that the onboarding is really as good as your selection and recruitment process was. And when it comes to things like your offer of employment and your contract of employment, the Act doesn't actually say it has to be in writing, but you can imagine if it wasn't in writing, we'd have a bit of a he said, she said scenario. So we want to make sure that whatever we discuss and agree with the applicant in terms of the job function, their roles and responsibilities, as well as the conditions of employment and the package you're offering them, is very clearly documented in that contract of employment. So the next two forms that we've got available for you in the on the SimplyBiz site in the template library is a recruitment checklist. So it should provide you with a really, really good idea of the employee hiring process, and you can use it to check yourself every step of the way, okay? And as I said earlier, you'll notice, well, in terms of the notifying employees of their success, or if they're unsuccessful in their application, you'll notice on the checklist that at several stages, you might need to actually communicate or notify employees that they were unsuitable for the position. So as I said, you could have something as simple as on your advert or on the notice you send out to say there's a vacancy, that if they haven't heard from you in 10 working days, that they must treat their application as unsuccessful. But once you get further down the line and you've shortlisted the applicants, so let's say you've got to like a shortlist of say 3 or 4 or 5 applicants, and those are the ones you're now going to interview because they have the skills or the qualifications or the experience to do the job that you're looking to fill. You now interview those applicants, and once you've made the decision, it is just good business practice, and it's polite to send a formal communication, whether that be email or by letter, to say that your application was unsuccessful, but thank you for applying. So then you'd have a more formal regret letter in place, and there's a copy of one of those in the book too. So the checklist is really quite handy, as it takes you through all the real points and the hurdles that you should be making sure you get over, and it gives you some really good, nice tips on how to deal with all the different stages in the selection and recruitment process. And then the other form that we've got for you on the site is a sample of an employment contract. So I've got a few samples of contracts in the book. There's a standard employment contract, so if you were employing someone full-time in a position in your business, versus a fixed-term employment contract. So let's say you've got an employee who's taken unpaid leave, or you've got an employee who's taking maternity leave because she's pregnant. So she's only going to be off work for, let's say, 4 months. And you're planning to employ someone for the period that employee is on her maternity leave. You will only sign a fixed term contract in that event. So the person coming to stand in for the pregnant employee while they're away will have a fixed term employment contract and they'll have a very definite start date and end date of that employment contract, with no promises of any further employment after that contract end date, because then once your pregnant employee's had her baby and she's had her maternity leave, she's going to come back into the same position or a similar position, but under the same conditions of employment. So it's very important that you're specific about the type of contract you're entering into. And you can't just go out and enter into fixed term contracts with everybody. It's against the law. If you're planning on having someone work for you for long term, they obviously need to go through or sign a permanent employment contract. You can include things like, it's gone out of my head. I'm blank. In the beginning, you can include a 3-month period where the employee obviously has time to train and learn the job, and you can give them all the help and training and assistance. And obviously, if they don't perform properly within that period, even though you've given them training and you have a record of all that training, so you decide then not to continue the employment after probationary period is the word I'm thinking of. And you decide not to continue the employment, you've got to be very specific, and the reasons have to be very clear and very in line with the law in terms of the fact that you let them go. You've got to be able to prove that you gave them every opportunity and all the training necessary to do the job. And then obviously if they can't and you decide to part ways, then so be it. But you won't enter into fixed term contracts for long periods of time. Employees must get the benefit of full-time employment if they're going to be working for you on a full-time basis. So again, probably best to seek the advice of a labour consultant before you go ahead and just sign contracts with potential employees. But when it comes to the employment contracts that are in the books, the samples in the book, obviously we've tried to make the contract reflect across a lot of different business industries, so relevant to a lot of different businesses. But you can take the contract out the book, the sample, you can manipulate it and update it according to what your business needs are and the job function that you're filling. But again, absolutely advisable that you find an expert or a professional to review it for you and make sure that you've covered all the bases, and that what you're saying in that contract of employment doesn't contravene the labor laws in any way. Okay. So the two recruitment checklists and employment contracts those two forms are available on the Simply Biz library template site for you to go and download and utilize as well. Okay, and it would be really nice if you have a look at them and you use them in the business. It would be great if you can let us know on the Simply Biz site how you're finding those forms. And if you've got any questions, post your questions. There is a a resource on the site where you can send us some information or questions if you wish, and hopefully we can assist you if you're running into trouble, or if you really like the forms, let us know. Okay, and obviously, as I said, the forms, the book will be available soon on the Simply Biz website for you to purchase. So if you really like what you're seeing and what you're using in my forms, you can go ahead and purchase the book. So moving on to the next topic, where it's important to kind of put systems and controls in place, and hopefully some of these forms will help you, is the marketing management aspect of your business. And so many small business owners are kind of, we all think we're good at marketing. And especially with social media, I think a lot of us think we've become social media experts because it seems to be so easy to do. But again, it's important that we make sure we've got a proper marketing plan and marketing policy in place with regards to our business, because you can really shoot yourself in the foot and do damage to your brand and your business if we're not really careful about what we're saying, which platforms we're saying it from, and how we're communicating our message to our customers and potential customers. You've all seen examples of stuff that's happened on social media. And from a marketing management point of view, there are many elements in marketing that you need to take cognizance of. One of them obviously being that, to assess your brand and make sure that you've developed a really strong and clear brand, and then that your policy doesn't fall down on, sort of disappoint you when it comes to implementing your marketing policy. When you execute it, that it doesn't actually bring your brand into disrepute. So make sure that first off, that your corporate identity, that your brand is very strong, and make sure you've protected it, register it. Okay, especially a lot of guys have been around for a while, and I know when you first start out, you develop this brand, but it also doesn't stay static. It evolves over time. So we think like, well, maybe I'll operate with this brand for a while, or this trademark, and then I'll see how it goes. And then we tweak it and we change it. So we don't want to necessarily register it until such time as we've kind of finalized the logo or the trademark. Don't wait, rather register it, rather protect yourself, so that there isn't an opportunity for someone else, or you limit the opportunities for someone else to come and try and sort of trade on your brand and pass off as your brand. Okay, we see this happen so much out there. Know your product and service and understand the market you're selling to is such an important point. As I said earlier, we all try, especially as small business owners, we try and be all things to everyone. I kind of sort of focus in my business on writing operations and procedures manuals for franchise companies. But over the years, I've been approached to do all sorts of weird and wonderful things. And I've kind of sometimes of the Richard Branson mindset, where I kind of go, yes, I can do it. And then I run away and think, I've got to find someone to help me do it. I've got to quickly learn how to do it and watch YouTube videos and kind of really upskill myself. But sometimes, depending on the resources you have in your business and the time you have to deal with your current clients, although we know we want to grow and we want to be able to provide a broader range of service to people, be very clear as to what your product or service is, and understand the market you're selling to and what their needs are in that specific market. Okay. And look at all the elements of the marketing mix. So the marketing mix typically are, your product, your typical product place, promotion, price, etc. And see where or how you can incorporate as many of those elements as possible into your marketing plan, so that you can carry them through into your business. And I mentioned earlier an important thing about testing and measuring. This is never truer than in the marketing space. There are so many options for small to medium business owners in terms of the types of marketing that you can do, the marketing initiatives that you can undertake to really, really market, advertise, and grow your business. And if you read the book by Brad Sugars called Instant Cash Flow, he's got some fantastic ideas for small business owners, and really not expensive. I'm not talking about top of the line TV advertising or expensive radio advertising. He has some really fantastic, even local community type advertising, where you can really get your name out to the target market that you're talking to. And but he reiterates throughout that book the importance of testing and measuring. Try something, test it, but have clear objectives in place. So if you're going to advertise, or if you're going to post something on social media, what is it you want to achieve from that advertising initiative or from that post? And once you've now put it out there, go back and test and measure the success. Did it actually achieve what you wanted it to achieve? And with marketing especially, this is something you should be doing on an ongoing basis. Everything you implement, have an objective, and then measure yourself against that objective, so that when it comes to spending marketing money, that you can then eventually say, well, I know what works for me. I know which advertising initiatives, which marketing platforms work for me. And that's where you start spending that marketing budget. And if you incorporate all of this into a marketing plan, which is another form available for you on the site, if you put it into a marketing plan, you then start looking at the strategy, the marketing strategy of the business, and how you get the message of what your business does and the product range and service range that you offer to your target market. And like a business plan, where it forces you to think about your business and look at it objectively, the marketing plan helps you do that from a marketing point of view. So again, I'll emphasize the fact that you cannot be all things to everyone, and it's important that you set clear marketing objectives and decide which are the most efficient and effective for your business. And the marketing plan then should be a summary of your main sort of marketing activities that you would include in your marketing calendar and your budget allocation. And talking about budget allocation, if you set a marketing budget in terms of how you go about that, setting a marketing budget for your business, in franchising, as some of you will know, the franchisor charges the franchisee a percentage of his monthly turnover as a contribution to a national marketing fund. Now that can be anywhere between 1% and 4% of turnover, depending on the type of business and the gross margins we're talking about. So this fund, now all the franchisees pay into a national marketing fund, so it's a collective fund, and this fund is used as a whole to market the brand, market the whole business, and ensure that awareness is created about the business, the franchisor's business. Franchisees, however, are encouraged to spend a further 1% to 2% of their turnover on more local marketing initiatives, so more your community type marketing initiatives. And that's where, when I reference the book by Brad Sugar's Instant Cash Flow, that's where you'll get some fantastic ideas where you can kind of spend that 1% to 2%. Now, if you're an independent business owner, you're not part of a franchise group, you need to look at your business and say, well, I'm telling you 1% to 2% of your turnover, but if you look at that as sort of the starting point of your budget, and then you look at the types of marketing initiatives and what those cost, obviously you need to try and balance out your budget. You might need to spend a little bit more on that, on marketing in the business, as opposed to cutting back. And typically when times are tough in business and in the economy, one of the first expenses, and I'm going to say expenses in inverted commas, one of the first expenses that business owners cut or look to cut is the marketing spend. And of course, when things are tough and things are, the economy's down, that's the time we should probably be spending more on marketing. We're trying to ensure that we're always top of mind with our target market and make sure that we bring them into our business so that we don't lose out when business is slow or the economy's kind of giving us a hard time, etc. Okay. So importantly, the marketing plan, you can go through that marketing plan. It gives you some really good ideas and hints and tips on what kind of information you could include in all the different sections of the marketing plan. And there's also in the book, there's actually a marketing budget template that you can then use to determine what it's going to cost you and how much money you need then to put towards those marketing initiatives. And then once you know what it's going to cost you to advertise and you look at your available marketing budget, as I said, you would need to tweak and change that so that you are both are aligned in terms of what you have available from a budget point of view. So you might need to put some marketing initiatives on hold until you have some money to do it, but try and find those marketing initiatives that you think will give you the most bang for your buck. Okay. And then the other form that's available on the Simply Biz site is the advertising what to check before your ad goes out checklist. And this one I included just because I see the most horrendous stuff going on, whether it's in the local Caxton newspapers or whether it's in an industry-specific publication, and even sometimes on radio and TV. Business owners either develop their own marketing material or they might kind of maybe try and do it a little bit on the cheap because we don't have budget for it. And what typically happens is our brand gets diluted, or I'd like to use the word bastardized, because that's typically what happens. We start putting out an ad and the maybe our logo is not quite right, or when it prints in the incorrect colors or whatever the case may be. Now that dilutes your brand. You've spent all this money developing a business and a brand and a trademark and registering it all, and now your marketing initiatives are going to let you down because it's not a true reflective of the brand. So the checklist just allows you to have a look at your adverts or your marketing collateral or material that you're planning to send out, whether it's a leaflet, whether it's another printed form of ad, whether it's a social media sort of marketing post, etc. Go through that checklist and identify, make sure that there's nothing that's amiss on your marketing collateral. Things like, is your is your brand and your logo correctly represented in the correct colors? Is the size of the logo correct? Is it in proportion to the rest of the advert? When you look at the advert, has it been skewed incorrectly? So some people elongate their logo or make it bigger, but they don't size it correctly, so it comes out looking like it's stretched or being squashed up together. Okay, make sure that your colors are correct, as I said. Make sure that your business details on the advert are correct. Nothing worse than posting, sending out a leaflet, printing a leaflet, or putting an ad in a local newspaper or on social media, and your business contact details are either not there or incorrect. So make sure that those are 100% correct. And is the contents of what you're saying, or of your advert, of your post, absolutely 100% correct? Check your spelling, check your grammar. I know we live in an age of WhatsApp and quick communication, but there's not always a place for that when it comes to communicating with your target market. So be very aware of who you addressing, who you're talking to in your marketing material, and make sure that your language and your grammar kind of is in line with the message you want to send out. And that just, little things that you've addressed, all the aspects of your advert. If it's a product and price point advert, is your price correct? I've known of retailers to advertise 2-litre Cokes at $1.99 instead of $19.99 or something like that, because someone just didn't do a proper check of an advert. So make sure that you really do pay attention to checking, and that checklist will just give you some good points to make that easy for you. So very few questions this morning. It's been a little bit quiet, but hopefully if you go and watch the webinar after the live broadcast, and you go and have a look at the presentation that's on the site, you might have more questions that you might want to send our way or address on the Simply Biz forum in the community. There might be other business people out there who have the same questions, and there might even be some who have some good answers. So to kind of wrap up as a bit of a takeaway, as I said right in the beginning, this presentation goes hand in hand with my first one on systematizing the business. And as I said right in the beginning of that webinar, I actually wrote the book, and at the time of writing my book, my whole focus was on using small business owners and small to medium business owners using the content in the book to help them to systematize their business, to help them put the sort of policies and procedures in place that allow you as a business owner to kind of establish your way of doing things. Like the McDonald's example, you have your way of doing things. It means that you can take yourself out of the business. You're not having to operate in the business all the time, but you can remove yourself from the business and start looking at your business more strategically, working on your business, as I said last time. So, from a takeaway point of view, we talk about retail and fast food and restaurant places. We say location, location, location. When it comes to setting up systems and controls in your business, mine is systems. So start off by going to the Simply Biz website, downloading the forms and templates that we've given you. It's a good start to set you up and get you going on that systematizing. And obviously, as I keep saying, if you like what you see and you're finding them that the form's user friendly, you can go out and buy the book, or you can go onto the Simply Biz site eventually when the book is available on the site. And the book, as I said, just to reiterate, it includes the samples of the form in the actual book, but then all those forms are included in an interactive CD-ROM at the back of the book, so that it makes it really easy for you to use and kind of download and access for use in the business. So if there's no more questions, that's me for today. Thank you very much for joining me again on this webinar, and I hope that it's added some value to you. If you've got any questions, go and post them on the Simply Biz site in the community forum, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time. Thank you. Cheers.